Hello and welcome to Rajawat Television with me, Frank Pereira. The rural economy is an important segment of the ecosystem and accounts for around 70% of employment and 50% of GDP, with agriculture being the main driver, followed by services and manufacturing. It is largely unorganized, and hence those working in rural India or consuming in this economy are a different category of economic agents driven by different factors. The economy is quite complex insofar as the fact that cash dominates in terms of transactions, and while there has been some intrusion of the use of credit and debit cards and ATMs, dependence on technology-driven payment system is limited. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will look back at India's rural economy over the last 1 year and what to expect in the final 2 quarters of the current fiscal. Joining me on the program today are Yatish Rajawat, former Group Editor, Dainik Bhaskar Group; Tajamul, Haque, former Chairman, Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices; Krishan Chaudhary, President, Bhartiya, Krishak, Samaj; and Kumar, Asst, Assistant Professor, Department of Economics, Venkateswara College. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with me on this edition of The Big Picture. Kumar, I'd like to start with you, of course, and ask you about the contribution really and how the rural economy has fared through 2016.
For over a long period of time, after having an increase in wages in the rural areas, after the aftermath of the recession which has occurred worldwide, we have been witnessing a decrease in the level of wages. And it is a fact which has been reconciled to by the policymakers in the country also. Important to notice here is a report of the NREGA outcomes, which speaks in terms of the fact that the number of work days which has been received by an average MG NREGA family in our country has been around 49. So which is far lower compared to what it optimally should be in a particular period, given that there is a crisis of sorts and given that number of states have basically have been declared drought hit. So one point to be specifically borne in mind is, in case performance of rural economy in the coming quarters is to improve, the government would have no option but to go ahead with large-scale employment expansion through its flagship employment program. Because otherwise, what's going to happen is this, that you have, through the current temporary impasse which has been created because of the opportunities which is coming up in the urban areas for migration, that at least in the short period, due to obvious reasons, have actually gone down. There should be some method by means of which we can actually have employment being created in those specific areas in itself where they hail from. And even in the same report which has been released by the government, it also says that contrary to popular wisdom, the NREGA has also contributed towards creation of minor irrigation works, check dams, etc., which has helped in enhancing the irrigated area under cultivation within our country. So in that background, we have to basically look at the whole rural economy.
Indeed, indeed. Tajamul, Haque, would you say that agriculture has done reasonably well in the last 3 quarters, or do you believe that it could have done better?
Not really, because I will say that in the first 2 quarters, it had the spillover effect of drought
from the previous
2 years, in fact, 2
yes.
years consecutively. And that had hit the farm economy, very severely. Farmers in most cases that time were all indebted. Otherwise also they are indebted, but the incidence of indebtedness increased. Now during the monsoon season, this particular Kharif season, we expected it to be better, and it was better in the sense the agriculture output improved. So to that extent income also improved.
But it did not meet expectations. So was that a concern?
Expectations, monsoon season, what is a good expectation, because the rainfall was well distributed all over the country, and the harvest also was good. But we are also expecting that in the Rabi season, it will be again better, because there was good soil moisture all over the country because of the good rainfall all over. So things will be normal. But to some extent, I should say, this demonetization has hit, partly because these poor farmers, they don't have cash, either cash to purchase seeds and fertilizers, and second, despite the fact that government has tried to help to some extent by allowing the some public sector companies to give them seed and fertilizers on credit, but still things are not happening the way it should be. The third thing is that whatever they have harvested, particularly the fruits and vegetables, I find this season, they are not getting good price. In many cases, they are selling at a very throwaway price. In fact, even their labor costs are not covered. In some cases, labor and transport costs are not covered. Even in areas which is very close to the big cities, that is what is happening. So under this kind of situation, I think things are not as good as it was expected this year, particularly. So I think this is very unfortunate, but hopefully things will be normal in the months to come. And if this rainfall, as I said, unless again the rain god always helps us, this season it should have been good, but next year yet you do not know what is going to happen. But the condition of farmers in general has been very poor, even in a normal year. As I don't know whether I mentioned to you, the average income, monthly income of an agriculture household in the country is only 3,081 rupees from crop farming. Altogether, it is about 6,400 or so. So with this 3,000 or 6,400, if you have a family of 5 members, how they can survive? In fact, none of the marginal farmers saves anything, because whatever they earn, they have to spend on consumption, day-to-day consumption.
Yes.
So there is no saving generated. So unless there is a drastical change in the approach of farming, whether it by way of integrated farming, some kind of technological breakthrough which reduces the cost of production of farmers, and farmers improve their profitability and income, as the Prime Minister said that we need to double the income of farmers by say 2022. If there is a sincere effort to do that in terms of reducing the rate of interest, in fact, I have been pleading that rate of interest should be 0 at least this year, or at least there should be some kind of debt waiver this year, because the farmers are in real trouble. So if they do it, probably there will be some relief for the farmers. Otherwise, really, it is not so good as on today.
Indeed, indeed. Krishan Chaudhary, how badly are farmers affected as a result of demonetization, as Tajamul Haque is suggesting?
It's a reality that money is not available in the rural area. Very tough conditions. I visit the complete Uttar Pradesh up to the Tarai and whole, and up to Karnataka I visit from last 8 or 9 days to find out what is the condition of availability of the currency, new currency especially. Banks are not, there is no currency available in the banks. This is a big problem. Yes, I can say about the Rabi crop, the sowing is complete and there is no problem, because seed was available with the farmer and fertilizer has been available by KREBCO, IFCO and government agencies. They are providing. Irrigation is there because they are able to buy the diesel from old currency. That was the real condition. But for day-to-day expenditure, for other need of the poor people, especially the farming community, they are asking for money. And the rural banking system, everybody knows that. The cooperative system is a totally failure system, especially in the banking. It has been captured by the top political peoples. Cooperative means political banking system. It's a main, it should be checked and balanced first. Government should make some solution, especially to provide the currency with the rural area. Either the lead banks can make some mobile banking system should be available with the villages, then they can go ahead for the further. Yes, as Dr. Tajamul Haque perfectly said that due to drought, the first last year was not so well, and now the condition, especially about the Rabi crop, we hope so that crop will be the good.
Indeed. Indeed.
Yes.
Yatish, Rajawat, you listened to what all our panelists said at this point in time. We saw as well over the last 2 years, there were several farmers' suicide as a result of drought. Now, as a result of demonetization, and as Tajamul Haque is suggesting that farmers are giving out their produce at throwaway prices, is that trend going to continue?
So, it is very unfortunate that this particular crop, the Rabi crop, which after almost 2 years, if you see 2014-15, agriculture witnessed a negative growth of 0.2%. 2015-16, it was 1.2%. Last 4 years, if you go back, we've had growth ranging from 1.5% to 4%. This year was a recovery year.
Yes.
We had good rainfall in the beginning of this year, and there was moisture in the soil. Out of the 629 districts that we have in this country, almost less than 33% received deficient rainfall, which is very good, considering our record over the last 5 years. But during this period, the farming community got hit by demonetization. And I will take what Mr. Krishan Singh Chaudhary was saying. You see, there are three components which a farmer faces. So the government eased the benefit on fertilizers by saying that they could buy it with old this thing. They eased it a little bit on the seeds, but what about labor? He has to still pay labor. Whether he has to rent a tractor or he has to pay the labor, he has to pay cash. There is no debit card, Paytm transaction happening with the labor. And labor in any farming activity is, during the sowing season, is 50% of the cost. So if you take an average of that, he is going to spend 4,000 rupees per acre, the maximum cost he is going to incur is on labor. The second most is on seed. Now seed, Krishan pointed out that he has used last year's seed. Now when you use last year's seed, your productivity is bound to go down. This year because of the fact that how it was stored, where it was kept. And so Rabi crop, in spite of what the statistics about the sowing area which has been given, is going to be poor. So he again, in spite of a good monsoon which we rarely get, the farmer is going to suffer during this season. And there is no way that he is going to be able to recover his earning back to even what it was in 2011-12. That means that he's still in a negative for the last 4 years. This year again, at the end of this season, he's going to be in the negative.
Indeed.
This is a very serious situation. You see, you cannot keep expecting the farmer to be, suffer continuous loss year after year and expect him that, those families, those people will be able to sustain themselves. Last year budget was on agriculture. This year they're saying the budget is going to be on the middle class. But this year there is much higher requirement to look at schemes, systems that can replace the income that has been lost because of a step that the government took.
Indeed. Dr. Haque, what can we expect from this budget? What can the farmers really expect from this budget? Can they expect anything from the upcoming budget?
I think I expect and also I suggest that government should seriously consider giving short-term loans at least to the farmers free of interest. That is one, up to at least 50,000 or 1 lakh, whatever is possible, that will give them some relief. Or if possible, now that a lot of money have come, the banks say we have a lot of deposits improved. So if that is so, at least a part of the money can be given as a debt waiver or loan waiver for the farmers. This is the immediate need and which I expect the government should consider. Second thing is that even the overall other aspects of budget for agriculture, that should improve. That means investment in agriculture must improve. The NABARD should be asked to, again have kind of interest intervention for long-term credit, because long-term credit has shown a declining trend for the last several years. So unless there is an increase in the long-term credit, institutional credit, the private investment will not improve. So in order to improve if the public investment is not rising, at least enable the private investment to increase. And that is possible only when you encourage the institutions to lend money at low reasonable rate of interest and also increase the amount of money that way. So these two things are immediately in the credit sector. Second thing is that you also need to strengthen the insurance sector. Already there are problems. I mean, although it was a good scheme, the Fasal Bima Yojana.
Yes.
But the way that is being implemented and discussed, I think there are serious issues with some state governments. Some say they will go forward. Some say that they are not going to, at least this Rabi season, many places they are not going to benefit. And if some problems come now for any other region, I hope that situation does not come. And we pray that that kind of situation does not come for the farmers, because they are really in trouble. So the central government should chip in and see how this kind of system can be financially managed, because I mean, they have not yet found some good agencies. Some of the private agencies, they are asking that this kind of premium rates are not sustainable. They cannot go for this. So they want something more in terms of subsidy. So I mean, it is not, on the one hand you say the farm subsidies should be reduced, and on the other hand at the same time you say this kind of people, intermediaries, should be subsidized in order to support the farmers. This is not going to help the farmers. We must have a very clear-cut vision about what we want to do for the farmers. Even the marketing reforms, e-marketing is a very good, sensible thing for national market integration or that can help to some extent the farmers. But then the way we are progressing again is very slow. So far hardly 35 wholesale markets have brought in the picture, that too with lot of inadequate infrastructure for certain selected commodities only. And then we have about 6,700 regulated markets, and our target for 2018 is only about say 585 or some wholesale markets to be covered. So we have a long way to go. We need to speed up. And as Prime Minister always says that I hope the whole government machinery works for that. If you do things as usual in a very normal way, it will not yield any result, any improvement in the condition of the farmers and the people in rural areas.
Indeed.
You need to do things differently.
Indeed. Is it time to think out of the box, Krishna Kumar? I mean, something new, something,
because,
changing times need to bring in something different.
Yeah, in fact, one should go through this NSSO situation assessment survey of the farmers, which clearly speaks about what Professor Haque was just telling, that the proportion of credit which accrues to these marginal farmers from the institutional system, that's through banks and cooperatives, is even less than 15%, which means the dependence of these marginal farmers on money lenders and other sorts of mechanisms indeed to finance their process of cultivation. That's something which the government has to address with a sense of urgency. And number two is to say that marginal farmers are less productive, marginal farming plots have got extremely low productivity, is to actually dismiss off an issue. How can one enhance productivity of the marginal farms? Because marginal owner farms, if you're basically going to address them and try to see to it that mechanisms of cooperative institutions are built up at the grassroots level, there's some amount of sharing of common facilities like say tractors, which is actually happening in the rural hinterland in a big way. If some sort of credit intermediation being made little bit more liberal, though of course I do not know how much would the government here with respect to 0% rate of interest, but at least at reasonable rates of interest, accessibility to credit and accessibility to public inputs which is required, because farm inputs have become expensive. Can there be mechanisms of sharing farm inputs, particularly amidst marginal farmers? How can we effectively utilize the employment flagship program of the government towards beefing up capacities of micro irrigation in the rural hinterland, that we would be able to generate a favorable environment in the rural economy, is something which we have to seriously address. Because when we have because why I specifically said about this 2014 situation assessment survey is that almost the same things were there repeated in the survey before also.
Sure.
There's no action which is basically being followed. For many years we now know that the marginal farmer is a very important constituent in the system which ought to be addressed, whose concerns ought to be addressed in the larger national interest. Because we can't now say that the marginal farmer is there and we cannot pretend that we can ignore the marginal farmer, because it's now related to employment and livelihoods, and it's related to a larger market also in these regions.
Indeed. Krishan Chaudhary, I want to go back to something that Tajamul Haque was talking about and talking about some of the schemes. Of course, one of them was the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Of course, there are several such very interesting and very good schemes out there, but have those schemes really been implemented? Do you see some kind of implementation failure along the way?
The old experience is not well, especially with the crop insurance policies. And now in the present condition, the proper implementation should be done for every field, for every farmer. because you are getting the premium from the farmers. He has the right to get the losses relating to crop. He should get the proper compensation from insurance policy. Then benefit will go to farmers. Second point, Dr. Tajamul have rightly said that in the present condition, the interest should be waived off immediately. And I ask to the government that this is the time that farmers' loans should be waived off. This is the only way to help the farming community, especially in the 70% population of this country is fully depend on agriculture sector, including the labor. Manrega is not sufficient to give the proper employment to everywhere in the village. It's agriculture who are providing the income to all people in the area. And one thing I'll suggest that for all small and marginal farmers, government should make on war footing policy that dairy sector, poultry sector, fishery sector and horticulture sector should be the priority for additional income for small and marginal farmers. Then come to the agro-processing sector, not on the large scale. Large scale means employment will not available. We ask that it should be the small scale industries should be on large scale, should be developed for concerned area, in every zone, as per the raw material available. That industry on a small scale should be available there. And the program should be made. We have an example of 26 states. The sample project have been done, and that's a successful product. Complete project is successful. Product are nicely, because there is a competition in the market.
Sure.
Quality of product, quality of packing, and the marketing. Three things. It should be available with the rural people. Some special programs, training programs at village level, not at district level or block level, but at village level, special centers arrangement to be done, and the trainers, the quality of trainers should be the local people. In regional languages, people should train them. Then come to the irrigation, micro irrigation. I am very fair that subsidy is being misused by the complete industrial sector. Irrigation, yes, it is the most important component to increase the productivity. Example is the Madhya Pradesh. The Madhya Pradesh government make the irrigation facilities and production have gone up. Productivity has come up. That is a must. Second is the soil health. Yes, government have implemented soil health card in last budget, and now productivity will increase, linking of river, that will provide the irrigation facility, but it will take more time. And another point is that farmers' rate of interest for Kisan credit card should not be 4% for minimum for 1 year. It should be annual. It should not be 6 monthly, because after 6 months the interest will come up to 7% in.
Sure.
Then it should not be. It should be for minimum for 1 year.
Well taken,
it should be long-term loan should be there as per the need of the crop. If it's a horticulture crop, the farmer needs more time. It should be given.
Indeed. Points well taken. You made some very valid points there. Yatish, Rajawat, finally, of course, I've just got 2 minutes left on the program. We haven't spoken really about small scale and medium scale industries as far as the rural economy is concerned. Do you believe that enough is being done? Do you believe that they can go through, the informal sector, of course, in the rural economy can go through this entire demonetization process?
So, as you know, that the medium and small scale industry is largely dependent on cash, and they've been hit very bad by the demonetization step. But going forward, these industries are shrinking countrywide, and the reason is trade, and connected to that is the bilateral trade policy that the previous government and this government has continued, which has allowed the import of small items from China into our country. This has decimated the small scale industries across the country. Even in rural areas where there were some industries which would be dependent on agriculture produce, are suffering on the hands of cheaper imports. Like, I'll give you an example. You take the example of the imported apples. Now, you will find that imported apples are coming from China, and they are sometimes much cheaper than Kashmiri apples.
Yes.
Now, you find imported oranges coming from China, which are cheaper than Nagpur oranges. Now, how is this possible? This is possible because we, our trade policymakers, in their wisdom, have signed these bilateral agreements with Singapore and with the ASEAN countries, which allows the import of these agricultural products into our country at no duty. There is no control. Now, how do you expect any small scale industry to survive against a large scale manufacturing industry of Chinese capability? So, the way we treat the SME and MSME sector in this country is with a stepmotherly treatment. They are seen as a necessary element, but when it comes to giving or supporting them at a larger policy framework level, we don't think about it.
Sure.
We don't take them into account when we think about trade bilaterals. We don't think about them when we think about import duties. We don't think about them when we are taking into account that how tax will be administered at that level. So,
fair enough. I've got 1 minute left on the program, so I'd like to get final closing comments from all my guests, starting with Krishna Kumar.
I really think that in the forthcoming budget, the government should think in terms of upscaling public investment in agriculture, because in our country, if that doesn't come forward, it would have a deleterious impact on private investment forthcoming in agriculture, and it would have a negative impact on agricultural productivity. I really think that should be the outlook of the government in this particular regard.
Tajamul, Haque, final closing comments from you.
Yes, as I said already, I don't want to repeat, but then improvement in public investment is very essential, both in terms of private investment through credit institutions support, and also direct public support.
Sure.
And
Krishna Chaudhary, final comment.
secondly, one more thing.
Agriculture.
Particularly,
He wants to make one quick point. Yeah.
On the whole, I think also the non-farm sector in the rural areas also is affected adversely currently. So that also has to be given some kind of attention and relief.
Indeed. Krishna Chaudhary.
Agriculture import should be checked and balanced, because the import of the agriculture produce, especially I will ask to the government that in the present condition, the wheat sowing has been completed, and we should not give more and more import of wheat permission to the corporate sector. It will damage our food security. We have a very sad example of the oil seed sector. Second was the raw sugar import, have damaged the sugarcane farmer, and now the wheat. What is the use to reduce the import duty? I asked the policymaker, when it was at 25% in September, you reduce it, but floor price have not been reduced, and now it was 10%. No, it has been removed. No, it should not be minimum. It should be 25% import duty on wheat to protect our food security first.
Yatish, Rajawat, quickly in 10 seconds, your final closing comments.
All the points have been made, but I believe that public investment and private investment both have to be increased in the agriculture sector. We need to look at it as an industrial sector and treat it as like that, not as a sector that is dependent on subsidies and
Fair enough. On that point, I'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with me on the program today and putting things into perspective for us. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much for watching.